My name is Madison Harper, and I'm 26 years old. One stormy evening, my father screamed, "You're dead to me," and slammed the door in my face, leaving me standing in the rain with nothing but the clothes on my back. 24 hours later, I was signing papers for a $52 million oceanfront estate in Malibu. Sometimes life's cruelest betrayals lead to its greatest gifts, especially when family turns against you while a stranger's kindness changes everything. Before I tell you how my world shattered and then rebuilt itself into something more beautiful than I ever imagined, let me know in the comments where you're watching from and hit subscribe if you've ever felt like your family didn't understand your dreams. I grew up in a suburban colonial house in Denver, Colorado. Our neighborhood was middle-class comfortable, the kind of place where lawn mowers hummed on Saturday mornings and kids rode bikes until the streetlights came on. My father, David Harper, worked as an insurance adjuster for 32 years. He was a man who believed in safety nets, practical decisions, and measurable success. Everything in his world had to make financial sense, or it wasn't worth pursuing. My mother, Sarah, had been his perfect counterpart. She worked as a nurse at the local hospital and shared his practical worldview, but with a gentler touch. She balanced Dad's rigid thinking with quiet compassion. When I was 17, she died in a car accident during an ice storm. The randomness of it shattered Dad's belief that careful planning could prevent tragedy. He became even more controlling, as if he could prevent any more unexpected losses through sheer force of will. My older sister, Jessica, inherited our parents' practical nature. She studied accounting at Colorado State, graduated with honors, and landed a job at a respected firm in downtown Denver. Jess called every week, visited on holidays, and never caused our father a moment of worry. In Dad's eyes, she was everything a daughter should be. Then there was me. I loved music, spent hours with my guitar writing songs, and dreamed of Nashville or Los Angeles. After high school, I attended the University of Colorado on a partial scholarship, majoring in music therapy with a minor in recording arts. Dad tolerated this because I had a boyfriend, Trevor, who was studying business administration. Dad approved of Trevor, often asking about his internship prospects while barely acknowledging my musical achievements. During college, I interned at a small recording studio in Boulder. Those were some of the happiest days of my life, surrounded by creativity and artists who understood that music could heal, inspire, and transform lives. After graduation, while Trevor moved to Chicago for a corporate position and our relationship fizzled out, I landed a job at Harmony Music Therapy Center, a nonprofit that brought music programs to hospitals, nursing homes, and schools. The salary barely covered my student loans and living expenses, but I loved every moment. I worked with children fighting cancer, elderly patients with dementia, and trauma survivors finding their voices through song. It was meaningful work that filled my soul, even if it emptied my bank account. Dad couldn't understand why I'd chosen such an impractical path. "Music therapy," he'd say, shaking his head. "That's not a real career, Madison. It's volunteer work with a fancy title." To save money and pay down debt faster, I moved back into my childhood bedroom. Every morning, I drive to various facilities around Denver, return in the evening, and face Dad's disapproving silence over dinner. Our fragile peace shattered 8 months ago when Vanessa Rodriguez entered our lives. Dad met her at a company networking event. She was an insurance consultant who specialized in high-value policies for wealthy clients. Vanessa was 48, 15 years younger than Dad, with sleek black hair and designer clothes that cost more than my monthly salary. Within weeks, she was staying over most nights. Within 2 months, she had moved in completely. From the beginning, something about Vanessa felt calculated. She was sweet as honey around my father, but ice-cold when we were alone. She'd rearrange the kitchen so I couldn't find anything, make comments about my hippie lifestyle, and suggest that Dad was too generous letting me live at home. "Your father works so hard," she'd say, sipping the expensive wine she'd convinced him to start buying. "He deserves to enjoy his golden years without supporting adult children who refuse to grow up." I tried to give her the benefit of the doubt. Dad had been lonely since Mom died, and if Vanessa made him happy, I wanted to support that. But she wasn't interested in blending our family or even coexisting peacefully. She was positioning herself as his future wife, while systematically pushing me out. The changes started small. Family photos disappeared from the mantle, replaced by generic artwork Vanessa claimed looked more sophisticated. Mom's garden, which Dad had lovingly maintained for 9 years, was torn up for a concrete patio because maintenance was becoming too much work. Each alteration erased more of our family history. Vanessa's influence over Dad grew stronger each week. Suddenly, my vegetarian diet was difficult to accommodate. My irregular work schedule was disrespectful to the household. My music equipment in the basement was taking up too much space. One evening, I overheard her in the kitchen talking to someone on the phone. "The situation is temporary," she said in a voice dripping with false concern. "Madison is 26 and still living at home. David knows it's not healthy, but he feels guilty setting boundaries. I'm helping him see that enabling her isn't helping anyone." I stood frozen in the hallway, fury rising in my chest. This woman who'd known me for months was discussing my life like I was a problem to be solved. The breaking point came when I received a small inheritance from my maternal grandmother's estate. Each grandchild received $8,000 when the trust matured on our 26th birthday. I was thrilled to finally have money to move into my own apartment and maybe buy some better recording equipment for my work. Somehow Vanessa learned about the inheritance over dinner that night. "Madison," she said with that saccharine smile, "now that you've received that windfall from your grandmother, David and I think it's appropriate for you to start contributing to household expenses. We're thinking $600 monthly would be fair." Dad nodded along without meeting my eyes. I was stunned. That money was supposed to be my ticket to independence, and now they wanted to use it to subsidize my own imprisonment. "I was planning to use that money to get my own place," I said carefully. "All the more reason to learn financial responsibility first," Vanessa replied smoothly. "Adults contribute to their households." Reluctantly, I agreed, watching my escape fund transform into rent money for a house I desperately wanted to leave. The next day, I wrote my first check to David Harper and left it on the kitchen counter, each dollar feeling like a chain around my ankle. A week later, I came home early from a difficult session with a hospice patient and found Vanessa in my room, going through my desk drawers and music equipment. "What are you doing?" I demanded. She didn't even look embarrassed. "Just organizing. This room could be used more efficiently." "This is my space," I said, trying to keep my voice level. "Please don't go through my things." Vanessa's mask slipped for just a moment, and I saw cold calculation in her eyes. "This is David's house. Every room is my concern now." That night, she told Dad I'd been incredibly rude and disrespectful. He lectured me about showing gratitude for Vanessa's efforts to improve our home. The gaslighting was so complete that I began questioning my own perceptions. Things escalated when I noticed some of Mom's jewelry missing from her music box, which Dad had given me after she died. A silver necklace with musical notes, a pair of pearl earrings, and her wedding band were gone. When I asked Vanessa about it, her face transformed into a mask of concern. "Oh, sweetheart, your father gave those to me," she said with fake sympathy. "He said Sarah would want me to have them since we're building a life together." "I assumed you knew." I knew that was a lie. Dad had specifically told me those pieces were mine to remember Mom by. But when I confronted him, he seemed confused. "Vanessa said you told her you didn't want those old-fashioned pieces anymore. She said you were happy for her to have them." It was my word against Vanessa's, and increasingly, Vanessa was winning every battle. I called Jessica in desperation. "Something's wrong with Vanessa," I explained. "She's manipulating Dad, taking Mom's jewelry, and trying to push me out." Jessica sighed heavily. "Maddie, you're being paranoid. Dad's happy for the first time since Mom died. Can't you just be supportive? Maybe you feel threatened because Vanessa has her life together in ways you don't." Even my own sister had bought into Vanessa's act. I felt completely alone. Around this time, an official-looking envelope arrived addressed to me. The return address was from a law firm in Malibu, California, Blackstone and Associates. I didn't know anyone in California and assumed it was junk mail, so I tossed it in my desk drawer unopened. As tensions at home became unbearable, I started staying late at work and spending weekends at my friend Chloe's apartment, doing anything to avoid the toxic atmosphere. My mental health deteriorated as Vanessa's subtle manipulations continued and Dad grew colder toward me. The explosion came on a rainy Thursday in October. I was at the Harmony Center when my supervisor, Mrs. Rodriguez, asked me to help with some billing paperwork. As we reviewed payment records, I noticed something familiar: my father's insurance company. As Mrs. Rodriguez scrolled through vendor payments, a name caught my eye. Vanessa Rodriguez had processed several large claims for expensive medical equipment. Could I see that again? I asked, trying to sound casual. Mrs. Rodriguez enlarged the screen. There it was. Vanessa had approved claims totaling $35,000 for equipment that was never delivered to our facility. She was using her position to embezzle money and cover her tracks with fake documentation. I excused myself to the bathroom and called Dad's insurance company, posing as an office assistant verifying claims. The representative confirmed that multiple suspicious claims had been flagged in recent months, all processed by Vanessa Rodriguez. I left work early, my mind racing. At home, I searched for evidence and found documents hidden in Vanessa's jewelry box showing bank deposits that corresponded with the fraudulent claims. I photographed everything with my phone, building a case against her. When Vanessa returned from her shopping trip, I confronted her in the kitchen. "I know what you're doing," I said, showing her the photos. "You're embezzling money from insurance claims." For a moment, her perfect facade cracked, and I saw the calculating predator underneath before she recovered. "Madison, you're clearly confused about how insurance processing works. These are legitimate business transactions." "Then you won't mind if I report this to the authorities," I replied, secretly recording our conversation. Vanessa's voice turned deadly quiet. "Listen carefully. Your father doesn't need the stress of your wild accusations. If you show him those photos or contact anyone about this, I'll make sure he chooses me over you. And trust me, he will. He deserves to know the truth." "The truth?" Vanessa laughed coldly. "The truth is you're a grown woman mooching off your daddy because you chose a worthless career. The truth is I make him happier than you ever could. The truth is he's tired of supporting your childish dreams." I was so focused on her words that I didn't notice her reach for my phone until she had snatched it from my hands. Before I could stop her, she had deleted all the photos and the recording. "You little fool," she hissed, tossing my phone onto the counter. "Know your place." I was shaking with rage but managed to say, "This isn't over. The insurance company has records." Vanessa's eyes flashed with fury, but then she smiled, which was somehow more terrifying. "We'll see about that." I went upstairs to my room, fighting tears of frustration. I needed to get those documents from her jewelry box before she could destroy them. But when I came back downstairs an hour later, I found Vanessa with a bruise forming on her cheek, a bruise that definitely hadn't been there during our confrontation. "What happened to your face?" I asked, though my stomach was already sinking. She just gave me a cold smile and turned away. When Dad came home, I was in the kitchen making tea, trying to calm my nerves. I heard Vanessa crying in the living room, her voice carrying deliberately. "I was just trying to talk to her about contributing more around the house, David." Madison flew into a rage. I never thought she would actually hit me. My teacup crashed to the floor. "Hit her?" I raced to the living room. "That's a complete lie, Dad. She's lying." My father stood with his arm around Vanessa, whose face was tear-stained, the bruise now darkened with what I realized must be makeup. "She's been embezzling money from insurance claims," I said desperately. "Check with her company." I had proof, but she destroyed it. "Enough," Dad roared, his face flushed with anger I'd never seen before. "Vanessa warned me you might make up stories. She said you were jealous of our relationship." "Dad, please," I begged. "Call her company. Verify the claims. I'm telling you the truth." "I already looked into it," Vanessa interjected softly. "She's been making calls to my office, harassing my colleagues with wild accusations." Of course she had covered her tracks. "I can't believe you would sink this low," Dad said, his voice shaking. Accusing Vanessa of crimes, physically attacking her. What's happened to you? Nothing happened to me. She's manipulating you. Get out, he bellowed, his face contorted with rage. Get out of my house right now. David, Vanessa said with fake gentleness, maybe we should calm down.
No.
I've had enough. If she can't respect you, she can't live here. He turned to me, eyes cold as winter. Pack your things and get out tonight. Dad, please, I whispered, tears streaming down my face. You're dead to me, he said, and those 4 words shattered something inside me that I wasn't sure could ever be repaired. What followed was the most humiliating experience of my life. Dad followed me upstairs, watching as I threw clothes into a suitcase. When I reached for my guitar, he blocked me. Leave it. It belongs to the family. I bought this with my own money, I said through tears.
Not anymore, he replied.
As I dragged my suitcase downstairs, Vanessa watched with barely concealed satisfaction. Outside, rain poured down as Dad threw more of my belongings onto the front lawn. My music sheets, shoes, my laptop bag. Neighbors peered through windows at the spectacle. I loaded everything I could into my 10-year-old Honda Civic and took one last look at the house where I'd grown up. Dad stood in the doorway, Vanessa behind him with her hand possessively on his shoulder. Then I drove away, homeless at 26, betrayed by my father, with nowhere to go. That night, I parked behind a 24-hour diner, reclined my seat, and cried until I had no tears left. Rain drummed on the roof as I tried to process what had happened. My phone battery died, completing my isolation. When morning came, I used the diner's bathroom to wash my face and brush my teeth. I called in sick to work, too emotionally destroyed to help others when I couldn't help myself. Chloe arrived an hour later after I finally reached her and helped transfer my hastily packed belongings to her apartment. Stay as long as you need, she insisted, pressing a coffee into my hands. We'll figure this out together. As I unpacked, I found the unopened letter from the California law firm among my things. With everything that had happened, I'd completely forgotten about it. I tore it open, expecting some kind of scam or advertisement. Instead, I found a formal letter. Dear Ms. Harper, our firm represents the estate of the late Robert Chen. As executor of Mr. Chen's will, it is my duty to inform you that you have been named as the sole beneficiary of his considerable estate. Mr. Chen was your maternal great-uncle and passed away last month at the age of 89. Please contact our office at your earliest convenience to discuss the details of your inheritance. Sincerely, Michael Blackstone, attorney at law. I stared at the letter in disbelief. A great-uncle? Mom had mentioned her uncle Robert occasionally, her grandmother's brother who had moved to California decades ago and become estranged from the family. He was the family rebel who chose music over medicine, according to family stories. With trembling hands, I called the number on the letterhead. Blackstone and Associates. A receptionist answered. This is Madison Harper. I received a letter about Robert Chen's estate. Within seconds, I was transferred to Michael Blackstone himself. Ms. Harper, thank you for calling. I've been trying to reach you. Is it possible for you to come to California to discuss the inheritance in person? There are documents to sign and matters best addressed face-to-face. I'm not sure I can afford a trip to California right now, I admitted, embarrassment burning my cheeks. That won't be a problem, Mr. Blackstone replied smoothly. The estate will cover all travel expenses. Mr. Chen made specific provisions for this. Would tomorrow be too soon? 24 hours later, I was sitting in a sleek office overlooking the Pacific Ocean, facing Michael Blackstone, a distinguished man in his 60s with kind eyes and an easy smile. Before we discuss specifics, I'd like to give you context, Blackstone began. Robert Chen was a remarkable man. He made his fortune initially through real estate investments in the 1980s, but his true passion was music. He built one of the most impressive private recording studios on the West Coast. He slid a photograph across the desk, an elderly Asian man with my mother's gentle eyes, standing in what appeared to be a state-of-the-art recording studio. Robert never married and had no children. He lived quietly here in Malibu, but kept tabs on his family from afar, particularly after his sister, your grandmother, passed away. He knew about me? I asked, stunned. Blackstone nodded.
More than knew about you.
He followed your career with great interest. Your mother had written to him several times before her death, sending photos and updates about you and Jessica. When he learned you were pursuing music therapy, he was delighted. I felt tears threatening again. A family member who would have understood my passion had been out there all along, and now he was gone before I'd had the chance to meet him. Robert had investigators discreetly check on you periodically, Blackstone continued. He knew about your position at the Harmony Center, your dedication to music therapy. He was particularly impressed when he learned you chose that path despite family pressure to pursue something more conventional. The parallels to his own life weren't lost on me. Now, as to the inheritance itself, Blackstone cleared his throat. Robert Chen's estate is valued at approximately $52 million. I nearly fell out of my chair. $52 million.
Yes.
This includes his Malibu estate valued at $18 million, his recording studio and equipment worth $8 million, his music royalty portfolio worth $15 million, and liquid assets totaling $11 million.
The room seemed to spin around me.
Yesterday, I'd been homeless, sleeping in my car. Today, I was being told I was worth $52 million. There must be some mistake, I whispered. No mistake, Miss Harper. Here's a copy of the will. Blackstone handed me a document that specifically named me as sole heir. Robert was very clear about his wishes. He wanted his legacy to go to someone who would honor music's power to heal and inspire. As I scanned the document, seeing my name in black and white, the reality began to sink in. The estate staff has been informed of your arrival, Blackstone continued. Carmen, the housekeeper, has worked for Robert for 25 years and knew this day would come eventually. She's prepared the guest wing for you. Staff. I echoed weakly. Blackstone smiled. Carmen, the groundskeeper Miguel, and a part-time chef named Antoine. The estate is quite substantial. He showed me photos of a stunning modern mansion perched on cliffs overlooking the Pacific Ocean, with infinity pools and terraced gardens. This is mine. I couldn't reconcile the images with my new reality. All yours. The car service outside will take you there whenever you're ready. I've prepared temporary credit cards and accounts for your immediate needs. After signing preliminary documents, I found myself in the back seat of a luxury car, heading toward my new home, still wearing yesterday's clothes, still reeling from the emotional whiplash. Your great-uncle was a wonderful man, the driver commented as we turned through massive gates. The whole staff loved him. He was generous but private, passionate about his music. As the estate came into view, I gasped. The photos hadn't captured its breathtaking beauty. The modern glass and steel structure seemed to float above the cliffs, while the infinity pool appeared to blend seamlessly with the ocean horizon. Standing at the entrance was a middle-aged Latino woman with kind eyes and a warm smile. "Welcome home, Miss Harper," she said as I stepped out of the car. "I'm Carmen. Your Uncle Robert spoke of you often. He would be so pleased you're here." The massive front doors opened into a soaring entryway with floor-to-ceiling windows offering panoramic ocean views. Sunlight streamed through the glass, illuminating artwork and musical instruments that took my breath away. Vintage guitars lined one wall, while a grand piano dominated the center of the space. "Is that a 1959 Les Paul?" I whispered, recognizing one of the guitars. Carmen nodded. "Your uncle acquired it at auction. He said it was his prized possession after you." She gave me a tour that left me speechless. The estate had 6 bedrooms, 8 bathrooms, a library filled with music theory books and biographies of great musicians, a formal dining room with views of the sunset, and a kitchen where Antoine prepared gourmet meals for special occasions. "The master suite occupies the entire east wing," Carmen explained, leading me up a floating staircase. "Your uncle's rooms are in the west wing, but this suite was always meant for you." "For me? But he never met me." Carmen's eyes softened. "He always hoped you would visit someday. He had the suite designed 5 years ago when he learned about your music therapy work. He said, 'My niece will need a proper place to create when she finally comes home.'" The master suite was breathtaking, with floor-to-ceiling windows, a private balcony overlooking the ocean, and a walk-in closet bigger than my old bedroom. But the crown jewel was the attached music room, equipped with professional recording equipment, sound dampening, and every instrument imaginable. The tour culminated in the heart of the estate, Robert's recording studio. A converted garage now housed professional-grade equipment that any musician would envy. "Your uncle recorded several albums here," Carmen explained. "He also let young artists use the space for free when they couldn't afford studio time." Against one wall stood a display case containing gold records from artists Robert had discovered and supported. Nearby hung framed photos of him with famous musicians, all signed with gratitude for his mentorship and support. He kept detailed journals about every artist he helped, Carmen said, gesturing to leather-bound books on a reading table. The stories meant as much to him as the success. I opened one journal at random and found meticulous notes about a young singer-songwriter, her background, their recording sessions, and Robert's hopes for her future. That first night, I stood on the balcony watching moonlight shimmer on the Pacific, feeling like I'd entered an alternate reality. The estate was beautiful beyond imagination, but the responsibility felt overwhelming. Did I belong here? Could I possibly honor Robert's legacy? I slept fitfully, dreams filled with my father's angry face and Vanessa's cold smile, interspersed with images of an old man I'd never met writing my name in his will. Morning brought clarity with the sunrise. I woke early and found Carmen in the kitchen preparing coffee. "Did you sleep well, Miss Harper?" "Please call me Madison," I insisted. "And not really, but I think that's understandable." Over breakfast on the terrace, Carmen shared stories about Robert that helped me form a picture of the great uncle I'd never known. He was quiet but generous, supporting young musicians and music education programs, but wary of people who wanted his money or connections. "Why did he stay away from the family?" I asked. Carmen considered her words carefully. "Your uncle made choices his family couldn't understand. He valued creativity and authenticity over security and convention. When they rejected his path, he built his own life. But he never stopped caring about his blood, especially your mother." Later that morning, I explored Robert's personal study, a cozy space with leather chairs and walls lined with music biographies. In his desk, I found a file labeled Sarah containing letters from my mother spanning decades, the last dated just months before her death. In them, she shared family news, including mentions of me, my first guitar lesson, my high school performances, my decision to study music therapy, my graduation. I also discovered a separate folder marked Madison with recordings of my college performances, copies of my music therapy certification, and even a program from the Harmony Center listing my name as staff. He'd been watching my journey all along, this guardian angel I never knew existed. Over the following days, I began to explore beyond the estate. Malibu was a world away from Denver, pristine beaches, artistic communities, and creativity celebrated everywhere. I visited local music venues and recording studios, introducing myself simply as Madison, new to the area. At the Getty Villa, I met Dr. Sarah Kim, the music program coordinator, who became my first local friend after we bonded over a discussion of their music therapy exhibition. "You really know your stuff," she commented. "Do you work in the field?" "I did at a nonprofit in Denver," I replied, still speaking in past tense. "We should grab coffee sometime. The arts community here is smaller than you'd think, and it's always nice to meet someone who understands music's healing power." That casual invitation became my first step into building a new social circle based on shared passions rather than obligation. As October turned to November, I settled into a routine. Mornings were spent with Robert's journals, learning about the artists he'd supported. Afternoons often involved meetings with Michael Blackstone regarding the estate or exploring LA's music scene. Evenings were for quiet reflection on the terrace, planning my future. I joined the Malibu Music Foundation, a group dedicated to supporting music education in underserved communities. At my first meeting, I met Jennifer Walsh, the foundation's director, who had known Robert. "Chen was one of our most dedicated supporters," she told me. "His annual contribution funded our instrument lending library for students who couldn't afford their own." When I mentioned I was Robert's great-niece, word spread quickly through Malibu's tight-knit arts community. Suddenly, invitations arrived for concerts, charity events, and private showcases. The mysterious heiress was a subject of curiosity. The Malibu Times ran a small article, Chen estate passes to music therapist niece, which thankfully included minimal personal details. Still, I began receiving calls from music producers, talent agents, and charitable organizations seeking my support. Michael Blackstone helped me navigate these new waters. Your great-uncle was selective about his public appearances, he counseled. You don't need to say yes to everything just because you can. As I gained confidence, an idea began forming, a way to honor Robert's legacy while creating something meaningful of my own. I would establish a music foundation that supported aspiring musicians and provided music therapy to those who needed it most. The Chen-Harper Foundation would combine my great-uncle's resources with my passion for healing through music. 3 months after moving into the estate, I had settled into my new life. The Chen-Harper Foundation was taking shape with help from music industry professionals and nonprofit experts. I'd converted the estate's East Wing into foundation offices and planned to open the recording studio to qualifying young artists. I had deliberately maintained distance from Denver, not reaching out to my father or sister. The wound was still too raw, the betrayal too fresh. I'd changed my phone number and only shared my contact information with Chloe and Mrs. Rodriguez from the Harmony Center. But the past has a way of finding you, no matter how far you run. One Tuesday afternoon, as I reviewed plans for the Foundation's first scholarship program, my phone rang with Chloe's name on the screen. Maddie, I thought you should know. Your sister called me looking for you. My stomach dropped. What did she want? She said she's been trying to reach you. Apparently, there was an article in Music Industry Weekly about the Chen-Harper Foundation that mentioned your name and connected you to the Chen estate in Malibu. Jessica put it together. So much for privacy. Did you tell her anything? Just that you were okay. I didn't give her your number or address.
She paused.
She sounded genuinely worried, Maddie. And there's something else. She said Vanessa left your dad last month. Took everything she could and disappeared. I wasn't surprised, but I felt no satisfaction in being proven right. Did you tell Jessica what really happened? I told her she should ask you directly when you're ready to talk. That evening, my assistant forwarded an email from Jessica that had come through the Foundation's website. Maddie, I've been worried sick about you. Dad told me you left after a fight, but I had no idea you'd disappeared completely. I know I didn't support you when I should have. Can we please talk? There's so much I need to tell you. Jessica. Still no acknowledgement of how she dismissed my concerns about Vanessa. No admission that she'd been wrong. I drafted and deleted several responses before settling on a brief reply. I'm fine. Building a new life. We'll contact you when I'm ready to talk. A week later, Carmen buzzed from the security gate. Miss Madison, there's a man at the gate saying he's your father. David Harper. Security is waiting for instructions. Ice flooded my veins. After everything that had happened, he tracked me down. My first instinct was to send him away, but something inside me, perhaps Robert's influence through his journals about forgiveness and second chances, whispered that running from confrontation solved nothing. Tell security I'll meet him in the formal living room in 20 minutes. I took time to compose myself, changing into a simple but elegant black dress, armor of a sort. When I entered the living room, David Harper stood awkwardly by the floor-to-ceiling windows, staring out at the Pacific Ocean. He looked thinner than I remembered, with new lines etched around his eyes and gray in his hair. He turned when he heard me enter, and for a moment, neither of us spoke. Madison, he said finally, his voice hoarse. This place is incredible. How did you find me? I asked, keeping my voice steady. Jessica tracked you down through that Foundation article. We needed to see that you were all right. As you can see, I'm fine. I gestured around the room. Better than fine. Why didn't you tell me about any of this? Your great-uncle, the inheritance. The audacity of the question hit me like a physical blow. When exactly should I have told you? Before or after you called me dead to you and threw me out in the rain? Dad flinched, as if I'd slapped him. "Madison, I came here to apologize. I was wrong about everything. About Vanessa, about you, about what happened that night." "What changed your mind?" I asked coldly. "My money, or the fact that your girlfriend robbed you blind and disappeared?" He looked stricken. "You were right about her. About everything. After you left, things got worse. She convinced me to give her access to my accounts, said we were planning our future together. Within 2 months, she'd transferred most of my savings to offshore accounts and vanished." I felt no satisfaction in his admission. "I tried to warn you." "I know." His voice cracked. "I chose to believe her over my own daughter. I was lonely and scared, and I let her manipulate me into thinking you were the problem." "You weren't just manipulated, Dad. You threw away 26 years of being my father because a woman you'd known for months told you to." Tears filled his eyes. "I know. There's no excuse for what I did. I came here to tell you how sorry I am and to tell you how proud I am of what you've built here. Are you proud of me, or proud that I'm wealthy now?" The question hung in the air between us. Dad was quiet for a long moment before answering. "I'm proud of the woman you've become despite how I failed you. This foundation, the way you're honoring your great-uncle's legacy while following your own path, your mother would be so proud." For the first time since he'd arrived, his words felt genuine. "I need time, Dad. You broke something between us that won't be fixed with one conversation." He nodded, wiping his eyes. "I understand. Would it be possible to talk again sometime? To try to earn your forgiveness?" "Maybe. But it needs to be on my terms. Not because you're impressed with this." I gestured around the room. "And not because you need something from me. I just want my daughter back," he said simply. After he left, I felt the complex mixture of emotions I was becoming familiar with: lingering hurt, cautious hope, and a new sense of my own strength. For the first time, I'd confronted my father as an equal, not as his dependent daughter desperate for approval. That evening, Jessica called. "Maddie, Dad told me he saw you. I'm so sorry for how I reacted when you tried to warn us about Vanessa. I should have listened." "You chose what was comfortable over what was difficult," I replied, echoing Dad's earlier words. "Both of you did." "You're right. I was so focused on Dad seeming happy that I didn't want to consider you might be telling the truth."
Can we talk?
"Really talk." I thought of Robert, who'd cut off his family completely when they rejected his choices. Had that brought him peace, or just a different kind of loneliness? "We can talk," I said finally. "But I'm not rushing back to how things were. Trust has to be rebuilt." Over the following months, I slowly reconnected with my family, but on my own terms. Jessica visited twice, and we spent hours walking on the beach, talking through years of misunderstanding. She admitted that she'd always felt pressure to be the perfect daughter and had resented my artistic pursuits because they highlighted her own abandoned dreams. "I wanted to be a dancer when I was little," she confessed during her second visit. "But Dad made it clear that wasn't practical, so I buried that part of myself. When you kept pursuing music despite his disapproval, I was jealous of your courage." My relationship with Dad progressed more slowly. We started with monthly phone calls, gradually working up to visits. He was seeing a therapist, working through his own grief and the patterns that had made him vulnerable to someone like Vanessa. During his third visit, we sat on the terrace watching the sunset, talking more openly than we had in years. "I always pushed you toward practical careers because I was terrified you'd struggle financially like my parents did during the Depression," he admitted. "I never saw how your passion for music therapy filled you up in a way that money never could. And I never understood how scary it must have been, raising 2 daughters alone after Mom died," I replied. "We both did the best we could with what we knew at the time." The healing wasn't linear or easy, but it was real. More meaningful than these external reconciliations was my internal journey. Through therapy with Dr. Elena Martinez, a trauma specialist in Beverly Hills, I learned to trust my instincts again and to value my own perspective. I no longer felt the need to justify my existence or defend my choices. "Your worth isn't determined by your productivity or how well you meet others' expectations," Dr. Martinez reminded me during one pivotal session. You're inherently valuable, Madison, exactly as you are. Those words unlocked something inside me, permission to exist without constantly proving my worth through achievements or compromise. 6 months after moving into the estate, I stood in the newly renovated foundation headquarters that had been built adjacent to Robert's recording studio. The space combined state-of-the-art recording facilities with therapy rooms designed for healing work. Large windows overlooked the Pacific, filling the rooms with natural light that made everything feel hopeful. "It's perfect," Dr. Kim said, admiring our inaugural program launch. "Robert would have loved seeing his studio used this way." "Your uncle dreamed of something like this," Carmen added, her eyes misty with emotion. "Using music to heal and inspire new generations. It's exactly what he hoped for." The Chen-Harper Foundation's mission was threefold: provide free music therapy to trauma survivors and underserved communities, offer recording opportunities and mentorship to emerging artists, and fund music education programs in schools that had lost their arts funding. Our launch event had attracted music therapists, artists, and philanthropists from across California. Creating the foundation had given me purpose, but the deeper healing had come through understanding my own story. Robert's journals revealed a man who had faced similar family rejection for choosing art over conventional success. His letters to my mother showed his regret about the family estrangement, but also his conviction that authenticity mattered more than approval. In one particularly moving entry, he'd written, "I've learned that you can't sacrifice your true self for the comfort of others. The people who truly love you will find their way back, and those who don't were never really yours to begin with." I'd also begun dating again, cautiously. Marcus Rivera was a documentary filmmaker I'd met through the foundation's work. Unlike Trevor from college, who had been my father's idea of a suitable partner, Marcus understood the healing power of storytelling and creativity. He was making a film about community arts programs and had asked to feature our foundation's work. "You've created something revolutionary here," he told me as we walked through the recording studio one evening. "It's not just about the music, it's about giving people permission to heal and dream again." Our relationship was developing slowly, built on mutual respect and shared values rather than need or convenience. Marcus supported my independence and understood that my foundation work wasn't just a hobby funded by inheritance money, it was my life's calling. The foundation's first year exceeded all expectations. We provided free music therapy to over 200 clients, including veterans with PTSD, children in foster care, and seniors with dementia. Our Emerging Artist program had supported 15 musicians with recording time, mentorship, and performance opportunities. 3 of them had already landed record deals. Rolling Stone ran a feature story on our work, calling the foundation a game changer in community healing and artist development. The article mentioned my personal story in general terms, focusing on how loss and betrayal had inspired me to create something meaningful from unexpected inheritance. A year after moving to Malibu, I made my first return trip to Denver. I needed to visit the Harmony Center and properly thank Mrs. Rodriguez and Chloe for their support during my darkest hours. The city felt both familiar and foreign, like a place I'd visited in a dream. I drove past Dad's old house, now owned by a young family with a swing set in the backyard. The sight brought unexpected peace, new life, and energy replacing the toxic final months I'd spent there. While in Denver, I had one final encounter with my past. Vanessa, now working at a small financial services firm after losing her insurance position, had somehow learned about my return and requested to meet. Against Marcus's advice, I agreed, choosing a public coffee shop as the location. She looked smaller somehow, less intimidating than in my memories. Her designer clothes had been replaced by off-the-rack business wear, her perfectly styled hair showing dark roots. "I won't pretend I'm sorry for what I did," she said after we'd sat in uncomfortable silence. "But I am curious. I wanted to see what $52 million looks like on someone who inherited it instead of earning it." I smiled, recognizing the attempt to provoke me. "I'm working harder now than I ever have, Vanessa. The difference is I'm building something meaningful instead of tearing others down." She studied me with what might have been grudging respect. "You've changed." "Yes," I agreed. "I have." As I walked away from that meeting, I felt the last weight lift from my shoulders. Vanessa had no power over me anymore. Neither her actions nor her opinions could touch the life I was creating. Back in Malibu, summer turned to fall. The foundation launched its second-year programs, including a mobile music therapy unit that could reach remote communities. We partnered with hospitals and schools across Southern California, bringing healing and creativity to those who needed it most. On warm evenings, I often sat on the terrace where I'd stood that first night, shell-shocked by the sudden reversal of fortune. The same ocean stretched before me, but I was no longer the same person watching it. Life's painful lessons had strengthened rather than broken me. My phone rang on my 27th birthday, Dad calling like he had every year since our reconciliation began. "I've been thinking about what to get you," he said. "It seems impossible to buy anything for someone who has everything." "I don't need gifts, Dad. Having you back in my life is enough." "I know, but I wanted to give you something meaningful." He paused. "I found the last recording your mother made, a song she wrote about her Uncle Robert. She recorded it on our old cassette player just before she got sick. I never gave it to him because I was angry about the family estrangement." The recording arrived the next day. In it, my mother's young voice sang a haunting melody about dreams deferred and paths not taken, about family love that transcends distance and disagreement. She had enclosed a note. "For Uncle Robert, who taught me that following your heart isn't selfish, it's necessary. I hope Madison inherits your courage along with your musical gifts." I had the recording professionally restored and framed the handwritten lyrics, placing them in Robert's study. A bridge between past and future. A reminder that love finds its way across even the deepest divides. 2 years after moving into the estate, I stood before a gathering of foundation supporters, preparing to announce our newest initiative, the Robert Chen Scholarship for Music Therapy, which would provide full funding for students from disadvantaged backgrounds to pursue music therapy degrees. "Music saved my life," I told the assembled crowd. "Not just because it led to my inheritance, but because it taught me that healing and hope can emerge from the darkest moments. Every song has the power to transform both the performer and the listener." Life continues to unfold in unexpected ways. The foundation grows, my relationships evolve, and I'm learning that happiness isn't found in wealth or approval, but in living authentically and creating meaning from whatever circumstances we're given. Sometimes the worst moments of our lives, like being told you're dead to someone you love, become unexpected doorways to our true purpose. The journey isn't always easy, but it's infinitely worthwhile. If there's one thing I've learned, it's that family isn't always defined by blood. Sometimes it's the people who stand by us when we're sleeping in our cars. Sometimes it's a great uncle we never met who recognizes our potential and leaves us the tools to fulfill it. And sometimes it's the person we become when we finally stop trying to earn love and instead build a life worthy of the love we already deserve. The foundation recently received our largest donation ever from an anonymous benefactor whose note simply read, "For Madison, who turned betrayal into beautiful purpose. Your mother would be so proud." I suspect I know who it was. Marcus, and I got engaged last month on the beach, where I first walked after learning about my inheritance. He proposed with a vintage guitar pick he'd had made into a ring, practical and musical, just like our love. "Ready to make beautiful music together for the rest of our lives?" he asked, and I knew without hesitation that the answer was yes. What started as the worst night of my life, standing in the rain, rejected by my own father, had led to the most beautiful life I could have imagined. Sometimes the universe has to break us completely before it can rebuild us into who we're meant to be. To anyone watching who has ever felt rejected by the people who should love them most, your story isn't over. Your worth isn't determined by their inability to see it. And sometimes, when one door slams shut with the force of betrayal, another opens onto possibilities you never dared imagine. What's your story of unexpected blessings that emerged from your darkest moments? Share in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe if this journey has inspired you. Your support means everything as I continue sharing stories of resilience, healing, and hope. Thank you for being part of my journey from heartbreak to healing.